The winter light in New Jersey was thin. So thin it passed over the back of my hand like a whisper. I followed that light, opening the living room curtains halfway, and quietly called my own name. Grace, you're okay. The remarriage began like a blessing. Joseph Grant. He was the chairman of a mid-sized company, and even at 73, his shoulders remained straight. The day we first met, he took my hand and said, "You're beautiful, Grace." Time sat neatly on the back of his hand. I was 66, and my hands, which had worked as an insurance agent, still remembered the texture of documents. We had a quiet wedding in a small garden in suburban New Jersey, on a day when autumn leaves were falling. He brought roses every day. Red roses, pink roses, white roses. The vase on the kitchen table changed colors daily. I tied my apron strings and looked at those roses. They were beautiful. They truly were. "Grace, you're beautiful today too." He said it every morning. At lunch, at dinner too. The word beautiful floated through our house like air. At first, it was nice. It was warmth that came after a long time alone. But from a certain day, those words began knocking on the door of my day. Morning, afternoon, evening. Not the rhythm of life, but the rhythm of demand dominated our house. "I'm a bit tired today." When I said that, his expression changed. A face that closed like a door. The smile at the corners of his mouth disappeared, and his eyes grew cold. He went to the living room without a word. He sat on the sofa and opened the newspaper, but didn't turn a single page. I stood at the kitchen sink and turned on the water. Cold water wet my fingertips. I wiped a glass and looked out the window. The maple tree in the yard was shaking its branches. My life before marriage came to mind. I married at 28 and divorced at 40. I parted quietly with my first husband. No fights, no resentment. We were just two people who ended up on different paths. After that, I lived alone for 26 years. Working as an insurance agent, I listened to people's lives, their fears and hopes, the real stories beyond insurance policies. I was alone but not unhappy. On weekends, I borrowed books from the local library, and in the evenings, I drank herbal tea and looked out the window. I was lonely, but that loneliness didn't hurt me. I met Joseph last spring. When I visited his company for an insurance consultation, he suggested lunch. It was a small Italian restaurant in Manhattan. He was courteous, witty, and knew how to listen. We grew close slowly. "I feel comfortable with you, Grace." When he said that, I believed him. His voice sounded sincere. But now, standing alone in the kitchen, I realized too much sweetness numbs the tongue. His beautiful wasn't a compliment but a demand. The morning coffee smelled good, but soon even the sound of his footsteps made my shoulders stiffen. "Grace, are you okay?" He came into the kitchen. His face wore a smile again. But I didn't yet know what lay behind that smile. "Yes, I'm okay," I answered. I stopped wiping the glass and looked out the window again. A single last leaf hanging on the tip of a branch was swaying in the wind. It hadn't fallen yet, but it would fall soon. I didn't know what would unfold ahead, that my life would shake like that maple leaf. But one thing was clear. The air in this house was getting heavier little by little, and my breathing was becoming increasingly shallow. The demands became a pattern. When I woke up in the morning, he would stroke my shoulder first. Gently, but he never stopped. I opened my eyes and looked at the ceiling. Morning light was finely drawn across the white ceiling. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice was still affectionate. But something was hidden behind that affection. Expectation, or rather, demand. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't lift easily. "Good morning, Joseph." I got up and went to the bathroom. My face in the mirror looked tired. Dark circles under my eyes, dry lips. I washed my face and applied lotion, thinking, is this love, or is it something else? At the breakfast table, he read the newspaper. I made toast and brewed coffee. Through the window, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking. It was an ordinary morning, but my heart wasn't ordinary. "I have a meeting in Manhattan today," Joseph said. "Ethan will drive. Would you like to come, Grace?" I shook my head. "I'll stay home. I have some things to organize." His eyes hardened for a moment. Subtly, but clearly. He folded the newspaper and said, "I see. You want to be alone, I suppose." There was a chill in those words. I said nothing. I spread butter on my toast. The butter melted and seeped into the bread. At 10 in the morning, A black Mercedes S-Class stopped in front of the house. Ethan Carter got out and opened the door. He was a driver in his mid-60s. I'd heard he had worked at Joseph's company for 30 years. He was always quiet, a courteous man. Joseph got in the car. I stood at the front door and waved. He didn't roll down the window. The car just drove away. The house left alone was quiet. So quiet I could hear my own breathing. I sat on the living room sofa and folded my hands on my lap. The maple tree outside the window still stood there. A leaf fell. Slowly, without wind. That evening, when Joseph returned, he was later than usual. Past 8 o'clock. I had prepared dinner and was waiting. Baked salmon and salad, and white wine. Was the meeting long? I asked. Yes, it was a complicated matter, he answered, taking off his jacket. But his expression wasn't tired so much as somehow excited. His eyes were distracted, and a smile kept hovering at the corners of his mouth. The meal proceeded quietly. Only the sound of fork and knife scraping plates could be heard. I wanted to ask him what had happened, why he was so late, but I couldn't ask. If I asked, something might break. Grace, he said, raising his wine glass. You're such a precious person to me. You are to me too, Joseph, I answered. But my voice sounded hollow. A few days later, I accepted his suggestion. I agreed to go to Manhattan together. He said we'd have dinner after his meeting. I took a beige coat from the closet. I stood in front of the mirror and applied lipstick, a light rose color. When I sat in the back seat of the car Ethan was driving, I looked out the window. Trees passed on both sides of the highway. Bare branches scratched the winter sky. Ethan, nice weather today, I said. Yes, Mrs. Miller. It's clear. His voice was calm. His eyes in the rearview mirror looked at me briefly. Something was contained in those eyes. Something like worry, or perhaps something like regret. Before reaching Manhattan, the car turned in an unexpected direction. It left the highway and headed toward the outskirts. I was puzzled. Joseph, is this the way to the company? There's a place I need to stop by, he answered. He signaled to Ethan with his hand. It was a subtle gesture, but I saw it. The car stopped in front of a construction site. A desolate vacant lot. Chain link fencing surrounded it, and cement piles and heavy equipment were abandoned. No one was there. Why did we come here? I asked. The view is nice, he said with a smile. But there was no view here. Just barren land and cold wind. Ethan got out of the car. He quietly closed the door and walked away. That's when I realized this wasn't by chance. Joseph took my hand. Grace, I love you. His hand moved up to my shoulder. I stiffened. Joseph, let's go home. Why? It's just the two of us. I don't want to. I don't like it here. My voice trembled. He paused for a moment. Then he smiled and said, all right. Next time then. The car started again. I looked out the window. The fence receded. My hand was gripping my purse strap tightly. That night, after returning home, I showered for a long time. Hot water hit my shoulders. But there was something that wouldn't wash away. Discomfort, fear, and suspicion. I lay in bed and looked at the ceiling. Joseph was already asleep, breathing evenly. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. In my mind, I kept seeing Ethan's eyes. Those eyes looking at me through the rearview mirror, that expression that wanted to say something. I made a decision. Someday I would ask him what he knew, what he was hiding. But before that, I needed to know first whether this marriage was love, or something else entirely. Truth didn't wait. It came before I was ready. It was Wednesday afternoon. Joseph had gone on a business trip to Boston, and I was home alone. I sat on the living room sofa drinking tea. A chamomile tea bag slowly released its color in the cup. The doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Ethan was standing there. He had removed his cap. The cap in his hand was trembling. Mrs. Miller, could you spare me a moment? His voice was low, but firm. Of course, Ethan. Come in. I led him to the living room. He sat carefully on the edge of the sofa. Back straight, cap placed on his lap. Would you like some coffee? No, I'm fine. He shook his head. A moment of silence passed. Only the sound of the wall clock's second hand could be heard. Tick, tick. Please speak, Ethan. I broke the silence first. He took a deep breath. Then he spoke. Mrs. Miller, There's something I need to tell you. I've thought about it for a long time, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. What is it? It's about Mr. Grant. My heart beat faster. My hands grew cold. Go on. I've served him for 30 years. I saw his first wife, his second wife. I watched how they changed. His voice trembled. The first Mrs. Grant was a bright woman. She always smiled. But 3 years after the marriage, that smile disappeared. Every time I drove, I heard crying from the back seat. She tried to hold it in, but I could see her shoulders shaking. I held my breath. One day, she said to me, I can't take it anymore, Ethan. He treats me like an object, not a person. That was the last time. The following week, divorce papers were filed. What about the second wife? I asked. My voice came out small. It was similar. At first, she seemed happy. But in less than a year, her face became pale. She looked like she wasn't sleeping. One day they argued in the car. What I heard was this: you don't respect me. I'm not your possession. Ethan lowered his head. She left too. After that, I kept thinking, is it right for me to stay silent? I couldn't say anything. My lips were parched. Mrs. Miller, you're a good person. I can see that. That's why I'm telling you. I don't want to see another person hurting. His eyes reddened. Especially that day, when we went to the construction site. I saw your face. It was full of fear and discomfort. That's when I decided I had to tell you. Thank you, Ethan. I managed to say. But are you okay? If Mr. Grant finds out, I'm fine. I'm at retirement age now. I'm not afraid anymore. He stood up. He put on his cap and looked at me. Be careful, Mrs. Miller, and protect yourself. The front door closed. I remained sitting on the sofa. My hands trembled. The tea had already gone cold. Ethan's words circled in my mind. First wife, second wife. Did they start like me too? With sweet words and bouquets of roses? And did they feel like me too? Something gradually tightening around them? I stood up. I walked through the house. Living room, kitchen, hallway. Everything felt unfamiliar. This house wasn't my house. It was Joseph's house. Days passed. I lived as usual. Made breakfast, did laundry, prepared dinner. But my heart wasn't usual. Everything was suspicious. It was Friday. Joseph left early for work, and I went grocery shopping and came back. The car was parked in the garage. The Mercedes. I opened the car door to clean the back seat. Joseph had dropped papers before. I lifted the floor mat. That's when I saw it. A red lace undergarment, crumpled, lying there. It wasn't mine. I picked it up. My hand trembled. I could feel the texture of the lace on my fingertips. It was expensive. It looked new. Through the car window, I could see the winter sky, clear and transparent. But the light inside me went out right there. I got out of the car. I went into the house holding that undergarment. I sat on the living room sofa. I spread it out on my lap. Ethan's words came back to me. The signal at the construction site came back. Joseph's late returns, his excited expressions, his distracted eyes all connected. I laughed. A bitter laugh. How naive I'd been. How much I'd wanted to believe it was ridiculous. Love. That word he said every day was a lie. No, not a lie but a distortion. To him, love was possession, control, self-satisfaction. I stood up and looked out the window. Under the yard's maple tree, shadows lay long. The branches were empty. That evening, when Joseph came home, I said nothing. I served dinner, and we ate together. He spoke as usual. How was your day, Grace? Quiet, I answered. He didn't know what was crumbling inside me. That I had already made my decision. That night, I lay in bed and looked at the ceiling. I could hear Joseph's breathing. Even and peaceful. I whispered very quietly, "It's over now." Moonlight came through the window. Thin and cold. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would speak. That I wanted a divorce. I put that red undergarment deep in a desk drawer. But it remained inside my body, spreading like poison. I had a fever for 2 days. I couldn't tell if it was my body's fever or my heart's fever. I lay in bed looking at the ceiling. The cracks in the ceiling grew deeper, like the cracks inside me. Joseph pretended to worry. "Grace, shouldn't you go to the hospital?" "I'm fine. I'll get better with rest," I answered. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. He placed his hand on my forehead. A cold, dry hand. "You're very hot. At least take some medicine." "Okay." I closed my eyes. I heard him leave the room. The door closed carefully. When I was alone, I cried. Silently, slowly. Tears soaked the pillow. The pillowcase grew cold. Why did I cry? Was it because of the betrayal? Or because of my own foolishness? It was both. I wanted to be loved. Even at 66, I wanted to be someone's special person. I hoped Joseph's beautiful was sincere. But it wasn't sincere. It was just habit, a tool, a lie. Night came. Joseph sat beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "The same," I said quietly. "If the fever doesn't break by tomorrow morning, you need to go to the hospital." "All right." He took my hand. I wanted to pull it away, but I couldn't. I still lacked the courage. "Grace, you're such a precious person to me." He said it again, the same words. I opened my eyes. I looked at him. In the darkness, his face was peaceful. A face that knew nothing. "Joseph," I called. "Yes?" "I want to ask you something." "What is it?" His voice sounded slightly guarded. "What is love to you?" Silence flowed. Long, heavy silence. "Why are you suddenly asking that?" "Just curious." I kept looking at him. He laughed. A small, dry laugh. "Love is being together, wanting each other." "What does wanting mean?" Needing each other." "Is need love?" My voice rose a little. Joseph let go of my hand. "Grace, you're acting strange." "It must be the fever." "Get some rest." He stood up. He left the room. I was left alone. In the darkness. The next morning, the fever broke, but my heart was still burning. I got out of bed. I stood in front of the mirror. My face was gaunt, eyes sunken, lips cracked, but only my eyes were alive. I took a shower. Hot water washed over my entire body. I dried my hair and changed clothes. A black knit sweater and jeans. I went to the living room. Joseph was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. "You're up. How do you feel?" "Better." I sat across from him. "I have something to say, Joseph." He put down the newspaper. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "I want a divorce." His face hardened. His eyes widened. "What did you say?" I said I want a divorce. My voice didn't tremble. It was firm. "Why suddenly? What happened?" "You know, Joseph." "I don't know." "Please explain." He leaned forward. I stood up. I went to the bedroom. I opened the drawer and took out that red undergarment. I came back to the living room and placed it on the table. "What is this?" Joseph's face turned white. "I found it in the car." "It's not mine." Silence flowed. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Don't lie." I cut him off. "I already know. Ethan told me about your ex-wives too." His mouth closed. "You didn't love me. You wanted to possess me, control me. That's what love means to you." "Grace, it's a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding. It's the truth." I gripped the table and stood. My legs trembled, but my voice didn't. "At first it was nice. Your affection, your attention was nice. But it got heavier and heavier. I couldn't breathe. Even when I didn't want to, even when I refused, you didn't stop." "Is that love?" "I loved you." He stood up. "If you loved me, you should have respected me. My words, my wishes. But you didn't." "Grace. And this." I held up the red undergarment. "This is betrayal. Clear betrayal." Joseph couldn't say anything. He just stood there, hands hanging limply. "I'm getting divorced. I want to end it quietly with an agreed divorce. I don't need alimony or property division. I just want to be free." He nodded slowly. "All right." It was an unexpectedly easy answer. I was surprised, but also hurt. He didn't try to hold on to me, didn't fight, just accepted it. Why? Perhaps because to him, I was just one of many. Like the first wife, like the second wife. "I'll pack." I went to the bedroom. I took out a suitcase. I folded clothes and put them in. Cosmetics, books, a few photos too. Joseph remained standing in the living room, looking out the window. I opened the front door. I pulled the suitcase. "Grace," he called. I stopped, but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry." I heard those words. I didn't answer. I closed the door and went out. The winter air hit my face coldly, but I felt light. For the first time, in a long while. The studio apartment was small, but it was entirely mine. It was a small apartment on the outskirts of New Jersey, and unit on the second floor, with a window overlooking a small park. I could hear children playing. I liked that sound. The first night, I sat on the floor, without having unpacked everything. The suitcase lay open, clothes scattered. I boiled water in an electric kettle. I took out a cup of instant noodles. I poured hot water. Steam rose. Through that steam, I thought. This is the beginning. I was afraid of being alone again at 66. But at the same time, I was free. No one was pulling me from behind anymore. I ate the noodles while looking out the window. Streetlights illuminated the park. A swing swayed slightly in the wind. An empty swing, but not lonely. The next day, I started looking for work. My insurance agent license from 20 years ago was still valid. I signed up for online recertification courses. Every morning, I sat at the computer for 2 hours studying new policies, changed regulations. I learned them. At first it was difficult. The text on the screen looked small, the terms were unfamiliar. But slowly, one by one, I learned them. A month later, a small insurance company contacted me. "Ms. Miller, can you come in for an interview?" "Yes, of course." I took a beige blouse from the closet. I ironed it. I polished my shoes. I stood in front of the mirror. The me in the mirror had changed. I was no longer anxious. My eyes were calm. The interview went smoothly. The interviewer was a young woman. She looked to be in her early 30s. "There's a gap in your work history." "Yes, I had personal circumstances." I spoke honestly. "But I want to start again. I want to help people." She nodded. "Good. Shall we begin?" A week later, I started work. It was a small office. Just 4 desks. My colleagues were mostly young. They called me Grace. Casually, without formality. At first it was awkward. But I soon got used to it. They taught me new systems, and I shared customer service know-how with them. "Grace, what should I do with this customer? They're very angry." A young colleague asked. "First, listen all the way through. Then empathize. Try thinking from their perspective. But it's not really the company's fault. Still, listen. People often calm down just by being heard." He nodded and answered the phone again. Later he thanked me. I smiled. It was a satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. After work, I walked in the park. Slowly, unhurried. I sat on a bench and looked at the sky. Clouds drifted by. No particular shape, just clouds. One day, I received a phone call. "Mrs. Miller? This is Mia Rodriguez. I work at the Regional Consumer Protection Center." "Yes, go ahead. We're looking for volunteers, and we need an insurance expert. Are you interested?" I thought for a moment. "Is a weekend possible?" "Of course. Even just Saturday morning would be fine." "Okay, I'll do it." That's how I started volunteering. Every Saturday morning, I went to the community center. There was a small counseling desk, and people came with insurance problems, consumer complaints, complicated paperwork. "I don't understand what this policy means," a middle-aged woman said. I took the documents and read them. Slowly, line by line, I explained. "This part here means this, and this clause is actually in your favor." "Really?" The insurance company only said it wasn't possible. "Try requesting again. Based on this part, I'll draft a letter for you." Her eyes welled up. "Thank you, truly." I held her hand. "Take your time. It will be okay." A week later, she contacted me. The insurance claim was approved. Her voice was bright. "It's all thanks to you, Ms. Miller." "Thank you so much." I hung up and looked out the window. The trees in the park were beginning to show green. Spring was coming. That evening, I opened my notebook. An old habit. Organizing my day. Today, I helped someone. Hope returned to her face. I felt lighter too. Is this what I was looking for? That love isn't about receiving, but about giving. I put down a pen and took a sip of tea. Chamomile. It was warm. Mia asked me one day, "Grace, why do you do this work? Giving up your weekends?" I thought for a moment. "Because I want to be someone who's needed. If my experience can help, that alone has meaning." "That's wonderful." She smiled. "You too, Mia." We drank coffee and talked about life, about choices, about regrets. "I'm divorced too," Mia said. "At 38. It was hard, but I'm okay now." "Me too." I nodded. "I started over at 66. At first I was scared, but now I'm free." "Freedom, that's a good word." She raised her cup. "To freedom." I raised mine too. "To freedom." The seasons changed. Spring passed and summer came. I still worked, volunteered, walked in the park. One day, a letter came from Joseph. It said the divorce papers were finally approved. There was a short note with it. "Grace, I hope you're doing well." "I'm sorry." I folded the letter. I didn't throw it in the trash. I put it in a drawer. The past isn't erased, it's organized. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked at my face for a long time. The wrinkles had deepened. There was more gray in my hair. But my eyes were alive. More than before. Grace. I called my own name. It means grace. Not someone else's forgiveness, but the warmth I gave to myself. Love didn't begin with receiving. Protecting my boundaries, helping someone and returning home to embrace myself, all of that was love. Through the window, the sunset was descending. Orange and pink mixed together. The sky was wide, and I was free. Tomorrow I'll go to work again. I'll laugh with my colleagues, and on Saturday I'll go to the center. In the evening I'll walk in the park, and at night I'll drink tea. That was enough. I'm 66 years old. My life has just begun.